on Wednesday, if work, is kind of slow, just sit yourself in front of the television because you'll have a lot of popcorn to pop and watch.
Award-winning multi-million-dollar-a-year journalist Chunk Todd, former Democrat campaign staffer, husband of a Democrat Party operative, and furious that NBC would speak to the former RNC chair, who's a Romney, for crying out loud. Not exactly a member of the Trump family, a Romney. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba. Bad to the bone. Chunk Todd is not. An amusing and entertaining moment in American journalism. I'm making quotation marks with my fingers. The jig is up. And Chunk and the gang. And then we got Mika and Mo Yarborough. Old Joe Scarborough. This morning, they're very upset that NBC fake news would hire a member of the Romney family. Very upset. How dare they? Don't they know that this is a hotbed of left-wing Democrat Party apparatchiks being paid millions of dollars to represent the interests of the Democrat Party all day and all night? And they got these, we got, what's his name, the commie, Lawrence O'Donnell. He's not a liberal. He protests loudly. He's a socialist. And that's fine because the commies are here. The Marxists are here. They're anti-American. They're anti-capitalist. They're anti-Israel. They're anti-Semites. They're anti-white people. We've got that anti-white people person today, too. The amazing stuff. It's Letitia James that the Trump administration is, what are they? They're too white and too male. I know it's too pale. She says too pale. What she means is too white because she's a racist. That's one of the many charming characteristics about Letitia James is that on top of everything else, she hates men. Is she a lady lover? I haven't even bothered to look her up. Is she have men in her life or ladies in her life? I don't know because she's very upset that the Trump organization, too male and too pale, too male and too pale, too white and too many men. You're welcome for the electricity and air travel and cell phones and instantaneous global communication and for brain surgery and heart transplants. You're welcome. That's don't worry about us. Just fine. So, Chunk Todd, he's big in the news today for all the wrong reasons, but it's fine because, the Democrat Party. That's something to talk about today, and lots been said about it, and I want to share a bunch of it with you. Also, this is the deadline. It's Deadline USA. President Trump, because of the racist, sexist, Letitia James, communist, radical extremist, anti-American, un-American, Letitia James, mainstream Democrat, she is demanding $454 million, along with that creepy judge with the creepy habits, Arthur Engoron, and $454 million today, or we're going to start rounding up the usual suspects. They're going to line up his properties against a wall and machine gun them down. They call it bond. It's not really bond, but it's kind of an amazing thing. It was pointed out over the weekend. $454 million for President Trump, or else we're going to start burning down your buildings in New York City. It's they're going to steal stuff like in the Soviet Union. Amazing stuff. And it was pointed out over the weekend correctly that Bernie Madoff, who defrauded thousands of people, left old people living in squalor, had worked their whole lives to retire comfortably. Bernie Madoff robbed thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people, fleeced them out of billions and billions of dollars. And Bernie Madoff's bail was $10 million. It was $10 million. For Donald Trump, there are no aggrieved parties except the racist Letitia James, who's also a sexist. And that's $454 million by midnight tonight. It's a deadline. So, hangman, wait a little while. I think I see my friends coming riding many a mile. It is a midnight deadline. It's like the death penalty and bringing him to the electric chair in the old black and white prison movies. And if the governor doesn't intervene, then the execution will be carried out at midnight. Rah! And these people. So we got that. Also, Kamala, and I want to keep you up to date on that as the morning goes on. Events are expected to transpire during the next 3 hours during the course of our humble radio broadcast. So we got that. Kamala Harris was speaking over the weekend, and that's always a mistake, isn't it? Because she said things, and she's not good at saying things. And so we got that going because she said really dumb things. And then there's the Mexican president, who is not quite as anti-American as the Democratic Party, but he is extremely anti-American. And he is, running his mouth, and he's not going to take any illegals from the United States, and he's not going to do us any favors. We need Trump back in to drop kick this guy through the goalposts of life because, honestly, he's going to have to, what was that, the movie Anchorman, Jack Black drop kicked the dog off the bridge. That was a very funny scene. And need Donald Trump to do that Andres Lopez Obrador in Mexico because this punk needs to be slapped down by a big country, by a real country. But we have to be on our side first, and the Democrat Party is not on our side. Remember, the Democratic Party isn't. They are the anti-Democratic Party, not on our side at all. So we've got those of you. Also, just see a massacre in Russia at a theater. I don't know if you saw the videos, got some pretty good videos of the massacre taking place. And ISIS took, they say, credit, not blame, but credit for the massacre, that the Islamic State, which Donald Trump crushed, decimated, and then Joe Biden breathed life back into it. It was Barack Obama that allowed them to flourish and spread. When Barack Obama saw ISIS beginning, it was like 4 guys in a minivan living down by the river and making hot dogs on sticks over a campfire. By the time they finished on Barack Obama's watch, they controlled a caliphate the size of Great Britain. The geographic scale and scope of ISIS territory expanded from a minivan down by the river to an area the size of Great Britain. And they were murdering everybody and decapitating, and the orange jumpsuits and cutting heads off with rusty knives. And, they're Islamists. They're radical Islamic jihadis, which those are terms you can't use in the Biden intelligence community because they're pro-jihad, but anti-Catholic. They'll spy on your Catholic church, but ISIS is good by them. They love decapitations. Amazing stuff. And President Trump sat down with the generals and said, well, what do we do? What do we need to do to crush these people? And our generals, who are great, said, the ones that aren't transgender like Joe Biden promotes, but they said, well, here's what we do, Mr. President. And they said, okay, well, let's do that. And then we crushed ISIS in a matter of months, and they were essentially gone. Then Joe Biden abandoned Afghanistan and fled, and it was a debacle and a disaster. Now ISIS has spread, and they've got control over swaths of Afghanistan, and they're coming back because Democrats are so weak that it always leads to a lot more dead. The left means more murder. The Democrat Party means more murder. Democrats equal more murder. Democrats equal more carjackings. Democrats equal more kidnappings. Democrats equal more gangs from El Salvador, from Nicaragua, from Venezuela. More gangs who are here to kidnap your daughter and chop her up into pieces. And that's what the Democrats want more of. Pretty amazing stuff. Tom Cotton talked about it a little bit yesterday. ISIS, Afghanistan, and they're taking credit for the massacre in Moscow. But Putin is a communist, and like the communists here, he lies all the time. And Putin is saying, oh, no, the Ukrainians did it, not ISIS. And there's a funny, who was the idiot over the weekend? Oh, it was Ali Velchi. I was watching it for you on MSDNC, who said, how they love to say, Donald Trump says that the Russian collusion dossier is a fake without evidence. They always, you know how they love that turn of phrase, without evidence? They love to say everything's without evidence when there are mountains of evidence. Joe Biden. Republicans say Joe Biden and the Biden family are corrupt without evidence, as long as you don't count all those suspicious activity reports at the Treasury Department, hundreds of them, and of course the bank receipts and the checks and the loans that didn't happen and there's no paperwork for, and the testimony of the CEOs of Biden companies and the Ukrainian whistleblower. You know, there's no evidence, but they always love to say without evidence. Ali Velshi, the guy who told us that the riots were mostly peaceful while the city block was up in flames behind him, told me over the weekend that ISIS claimed responsibility for the massacre in Moscow without evidence. It's like without it. Well, the evidence is the mass murder and the history that radical Islamic jihadis have. Don't say those words in the intelligence community because they're pro-radical Islamic jihad. Pretty amazing stuff. So we've got a few things for you today. There are lots of stories from the crazy people. And Chunk Todd. Now we've got President Trump and the $454 million. We've got with a midnight deadline. Dun, dun, dun. Such drama from these queens of drama. Just amazing stuff. But amazing. Now, the New York Post reporting the media mob's free pass for the Bidens at any sign of scrutiny is no accident. They're all in on it. Story in the New York Post. And it's true, the news media, it doesn't matter. We had a hearing last week with Tony Bobulinski, who was a longtime Biden family business associate, CEO of at least one of their many shell companies, laying it out, showing the receipts, explaining it to AOC, who's as dim as ever. And the news media, they lay on top of it like it's a hand grenade, and they want to save the Democratic Party and win the Democrat Medal of Honor. Amazing stuff. The cover-up is an ongoing truth, an ongoing reality. And in case you don't believe me, wait till you see the news media attacking, including NBC and Chunk Todd, attacking NBC fake news for daring to hire Ronna Romney McDaniel, who was the chair of the Republican National Committee and obviously a member of the Romney family of Mitt Romney, squishy, wishy-washy Republican who happily loses at every turn. And boy, it's outrageous that they would hire anybody who's not a communist like all the other, and the socialists like that dim-witted NBC host who brags about being a socialist. It's amazing. They're all fine with that. And Jen Psaki, that's fine. So we got that. And did you see Kamala Harris over the weekend? She was in Puerto Rico, Riba. And she was standing there trying to demonstrate her rhythm, which is on again, off again. And she's clapping and a big smile, blacking along, while they're singing in Spanish and playing some, like, ay, 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 ay. And playing the guitar and pounding sticks on logs and things. And they're singing. And a lady leaned over to Kamala and said, oh, yeah, by the way, they're singing about kill the Jews and save Hamas, the radical Islamic terrorist jihadi thing. And she decided to stop clapping and singing along. But she was humiliated. It really wasn't her fault. Although Barack Obama did warn her that she needed to learn to speak Spanish years ago, and she failed to heed Barack Obama's warning of the fundamental transformation of America. But I've got to say that the people singing the pro-Hamas song, the hosts that the Democrat Party set up for Kamala to visit, they sabotaged her because the left is all pro-death. Pro-death. They're anti-life. If you're pro-life, they're anti-you. They're pro-death. They're pro-organ harvest. They're pro-exterminate 40% of the black population in the womb. They don't like people. They don't like babies. They don't like adults. They don't like teenagers, except when it comes to sexual things, because they're pretty twisted when it comes to that. So amazing stuff there. Yes, sir. And they love Hamas. They hate the Jews. No, they just hate Israel. Yeah, that's the only state of Jews. That's the thing. That's how you can tell. Oh, I hate Japan, but I don't hate the Japanese. Really? Well, Japan is the only country that Democrats, their brains do not work as designed. Amazing stuff. The bloodlust of the left lives on into the 21st century. Wah, wah, wah. Yeah, Kamala Harris weighed in on Israel, too. That didn't go over very well. Even Glenn Greenwald, famous lefty and journalist, weighing in on Chunk Todd and the Democrats. James Carville is in the news again, sort of because his brain is, well, he's as unhinged as any of them. We've got George Orwell in the news today. Google changed the definition of the word bloodbath online because it became convenient for the Democratic Party in their Orwellian way to change the definition of the word bloodbath to make it more anti-Trump. If these people aren't commies, I'm telling you. Lots and lots. We're at 888-630-9625. Crime, mayhem, terrorism, Democrats. Coming up. Hey, it's Chris Plant. Excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Visit ChrisPlantCruise.com. Had a great weekend with my best girl. We were out and about much of the weekend, hiking around the city. A little brisk, but sunny and kind of windy and nice. It was like spring. And I don't know if you but a little chilly. And we went to dining establishments, and we enjoyed ourselves very much. Watched a bit of college basketball here and there, including the Iowa ladies. They have ladies basketball. It's kind of fun. That's good stuff. And I don't know if you saw the moon last night and the moon this morning. We get great moon stuff from where we live, and the moon set today was, we're up very early, long before the sun comes up, and the moon going down in the sky. Great, great stuff. Wonderful. It's like there's a god or something. Democrats would nail him to a piece of wood if they could find him. But that's we've got that going. And there are a lot of Democrat stories to share with you because we had a weekend and a couple of days. Now in Washington, D.C., so it piles up, the crazy piles up because of all the violently insane criminal mobs that are the Democrat Party across the country. In Washington, D.C., the headline is the police chief here, Metropolitan Police Department. The chief says the Metropolitan Police Department is shrinking so much that they may have to stop investigating property crimes. It's always good to send that message to the children of the Democrats. And did you see? So there'll be more property crimes because they're going to stop investigating. And in Texas, a 7-year-old and a 12-year-old arrested with stabbing a woman at her home. Police have determined that they will grow up to be Democrats. All right, let me get to the Chunk Todd. You know, we've always been big fans of Chunk. Chunk is a horrible, he's the journalistic equivalent of a street prostitute, I think. Although many street prostitutes have a great deal of integrity, and Chunk, of course, does not. Chunk is not a good man. He does play the French horn. He plays the French horn. He was in the marching band in school, French horn guy. Sitting around the NBC studio, we wired his office with a microphone, and here's Chunk. Chunk right now, he's not a good French horn player, but he can do this much. Chunk is a now former Democrat Party staffer. He worked on the campaign, the presidential campaign of left-wing radical Democrat Senator Tom Harkin, who was at the time from Iowa, ranked the most liberal member of the Senate. And Chunk worked on his campaign staff. Chunk Todd's wife, and this is not guilt by association, it's just his family ties, you know. Chunk Todd's wife, of course, runs a left-wing political operation in Virginia Her offices are in Virginia, and she's been hired again and again by Bernie Sanders to do the bidding of the radical left in the United States. And we know that they're all left-wing hacks and they're not journalists at all, that they're Democrat Party apparatchiks, and that NBC News is a front group for the Democrat Party. That's the thing. And the story, who did this story in 2018, Fox News, NBC News star. Yeah, we started calling news people stars because they're on TV. That's when we really started heading south. Chunk Todd on conflicts of interest. Quote, "That's my wife. That's not me." Sure, take my wife, please. Unbelievably. Chunk Todd was called out hypocrisy regarding conflicts of interest during an appearance on WABC's Bernie and Sid radio show on Friday morning back in 2018. But he doesn't seem to mind that his wife's conflicts of interests should affect him at all. His wife, again, left-wing, Democrat political consultant type, works on Democrat or socialist campaigns. And all of that is fine because, what's the problem? They're all on Team Democrat and they're all in the hot tub there with their hands all under the water. We know what's going on. Pretty amazing stuff. But Christian Todd, who's married to Chuck Todd, worked with James Webb, 2006 Senate campaign in Virginia. The relationship wasn't mentioned when Webb appeared on Meet the Press in 2017, even though his wife was promoting him and working for him in 2016. His wife was working for the Bernie Sanders campaign, and that wasn't mentioned when Chuck interviewed Bernie Sanders again and again. No problem there. She also donated to Democrat Senator Tim Kaine's campaign, but her company took in millions from the Bernie Sanders presidential campaign and presumably a Senate campaign also. And he never disclosed any of these things, right? Why would he disclose any of that? That's not a problem. I'd like to point, so, you have, I'm a socialist. I'm not even, this is MSNBC and Lawrence O'Donnell on Morning Joke. And they're talking about who's more liberal when one of their 1 hour show anchors, Lawrence O'Donnell, declared he's a Bolshevik.
Unlike you, I am not a progressive. I am not a liberal who's so afraid of the word that I had to change my name to progressive.
I'm not either.
Liberals amuse me. I am a socialist. I live to the extreme left.
Great.
The extreme left of you mere liberals, okay?
So he declares himself to be an extremist. Extreme leftists murdered 100 million people in the 20th century, and they're marching forward into the 21st century with China, Xi Jinping, Ricochet Rabbit, and with Vlad the Impaler Putin, a career KGB officer, and he's butchering people in Ukraine, and we're helping with both sides of that war because Joe Biden is the most inept president or the most corrupt president or perhaps the most inept and the most corrupt president in certainly the modern history of the United States of America. Isn't that amazing? Now, I'd like to point something else out because the great Brent Bozell pointed this out to me this morning. NBC fake news, which is all up in arms, their people are all up in arms about hiring Ronna Romney McDaniel, the former RNC chair, to be an opinion voice on their air.
President.
I think they're going to fire her before this whole thing is over because of the gender panic that they're in over there at NBC. But the great Brent Bozell pointed out that Michael Steele, who is also a former RNC chair, works at MSDNC too, doing the same thing. So, but he's black. So maybe it'd be racist for them to attack Michael Steele the way they're attacking Ronna Romney McDaniel. But they're sexist by their own rules, just applying their own rules. They're sexist to attack Ronna Romney McDaniel when they're not attacking Michael Steele, who is a man, right? Michael Steele was on MSDNC yesterday in 3 different hours. He was on in the 8 a.m. hour, the 9 a.m. hour, and the 11 a.m. hour, for which they pay him. He's a paid consultant and opinion person at MSDNC. And it didn't come up. They didn't ask him to say, hey, we've got this crazy thing going on at NBC over Ronna Romney McDaniel being hired. But Michael Steele, I bet he's not on today. I bet he's not going to come on today. Now, let's get to what's going on here. And it is ironic. You've got, he said, to the extreme left, Lawrence O'Donnell, they pay him 7 figures to host a show on a cable channel that almost nobody watches. And he's an extreme leftist. That's what he said, his own words. Extreme leftists are the most dangerous people in the history of the world. The most murderous, the most bloodthirsty, the guiltiest. They make, the Socialist Workers' Party of Adolf Hitler didn't murder as many people, nearly as many people as the communists and socialists of the 20th century. And here they come. They're coming back for more. But isn't that amazing? And that's okay at NBC. And this is just NBC. It's MSNBC. It's NBC. That's the key part. That's their last name. And amazing stuff. Now let's go to Kristen Welker. Kristen Welker pretends to be a journalist. She's not. She's fake. She's a DEI hire. She that means didn't earn it. She didn't earn it. Right? And as a DEI hire, she interviewed Ronna Romney McDaniel, the brand new hire at NBC Fake News. She interviewed her for Face the Meat. I'm sorry, Meet the Press. And how dare Chuck Todd then interviewed her. It was a great big circle fest in a hot tub. Chunk Todd then sat down with Kristen Welker, and he was irate. He was beside himself. He wouldn't say this about Michael Steele. Michael Steele beat the hell out of him, I think. And Michael Steele is black, and they can only attack Clarence Thomas because Joe Biden started that decades ago, and the Democrat Party is still a lynch mob all these years later. But Chunk sat down with Kristen, and I feel so sorry for you because you had to speak to Ronna Romney of the Romney family, McDaniel, and it must have been so terrible. She was the RNC chair. And Chunk, again, former Democrat campaign staffer whose wife is a Bernie Sanders campaign staffer, pay no attention to any of that. And Lawrence O'Donnell is self-declared extreme leftist and a socialist. Never mind that. And Michael Steele, former RNC chair, is already working there. So this mental incapacity that Chunk demonstrated with his little Shakespeare in the Park beard and his comb-over and all this stuff, Chunk Todd with Kristen Welker.
Look, let me deal with the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I think our bosses owe you an apology for putting you in this situation because I don't know what to believe. She is now a paid contributor
So are you.
by NBC News. So I have no idea whether any answer she gave to you was because she didn't want to mess up her contract.
Well, that's true of everything you're saying right now. Our bosses owe you an apology because this is the language of civil war, uncivil war, anti-civil war, and the Democrat Party is the party of our first civil war. We should anticipate that should the tragedy of a second civil war become a horrible reality in the United States, that the left will drive us there. Chunk Todd has never been smart. He's never been bright. He's never been a good journalist. He's never really been a journalist at all. But never mind that, because it's the American news media, the most corrupt institution in America. Meet the Press host. She took over Meet the Press from Chunk Todd. Kristen Welker, forced to assure viewers she had nothing to do with McDaniel hiring a head of interview of ex-RNC chair. Oh no, you're going to have to sit down with Ronna Romney McDaniel. The internal backlash at NBC News, their hiring of former Republican National Committee Chairman Ronna McDaniel, has an as an analyst. How dare they? Continued on Sunday in stunning fashion as Chunk Todd castigated network bosses on the air for their decision to hire her during an appearance on their flagship program Meet the Press. Todd, who was the former host is the former host of Meet the Press, he was furious after the current host of Meet the Press, Kristen Welker, no brain trust herself, conducted a tense interview with Ronna Romney McDaniel, a segment earlier about her past election rhetoric, claims about, how about Chuck Todd's rhetoric? Claims about Democrats being communists and baby killers and rioters and violent and carjackers and shooting everybody and all that stuff. The interview didn't even get to any of that stuff. The interview had already been set before Friday's announcement that she was now going to be a paid contributor to NBC News and its platforms. Oh, no. How terrible. Isn't that terrible? So Chunk and the gang. And our bosses owe you an apology because you had to interview this nice woman from the most moderate, squishy, wishy-washy Republican family, the Romney family, who was the chair of the RNC, who stepped down as chair the moment Donald Trump had presumably secured the nomination this time around. But that's not enough for the lynch mob. They'll tie you to the bumper of their truck and drag you to death.
She has credibility issues that she still has to deal with.
Yeah.
Is
like
she
you.
speaking for herself or is she speaking on behalf of who's paying her?
What about you?
Once at the RNC, she did say that, hey, I'm speaking for the party.
That's her job.
I get that. That's part of the job.
That's the job.
So what about here?
Yeah, so what about here? What are you confused about? You've got, now, I mean, on MSDNC, Jen Psaki has a 1 hour show. Ronna Romney McDaniel doesn't have a 1 hour show. Chunk Todd, former Democrat campaign staffer, shall we go over to CNN? And then you look at Jen Psaki. Jen Psaki was a Democrat Party apparatchik and then a spokesmodel for the dim-witted Democrat Joe Biden as president. She uses gasoline on her hair to get that natural color, and she is the Colonel Klebb of Democrat Party politics from the James Bond movie From Russia with Love. But never mind that. She's got a spike in her shoe. And Jen Psaki was a Democrat apparatchik, then a White House spokesmodel. And then, bam, like George Stephanopoulos, suddenly overnight, she's an award-winning 7-figure journalist on a television network with no journalistic background whatsoever. George Stephanopoulos at ABC, $17 million a year network news anchor, no journalistic background whatsoever, just Democrat Party background. And Chunk Todd yesterday with Kristen Welker, he was very upset.
Look, there's a reason why there's a lot of journalists at NBC News uncomfortable with this, because many of our professional dealings with the RNC over the last 6 years have been met with gaslighting, have been met with character assassination. So
gaslighting, character assassination.
That's where you begin.
Deplorables, the whole country, all the deplorables. How about Russian collusion? How about the dossier? How about, what was it just the other day? Bloodbath. And Google has changed the definition of the word bloodbath to make it conform with the Democrat Party talking points. Aren't they amazing? I've got more Chunk Todd for you and other media madness on this topic when we come back, including this morning on Morning Joke. Joke and his semi-inflatable flotation device of a third wife trying to, and isn't Joe Scarborough a former member of Congress? He was a fake Republican. Now he's a fake journalist. These are amazing times we're in the United States of America. And the left is behind all of it. And, of course, the 950 carjackings in Washington last year, too. Every single one perpetrated by a Democrat. We are at 888-630-9625. Our news media. What a donkey show. All right, let's take a phone call. Michael, I have more for you on this. And then I want to I want to get past that, get to President Trump and the biggest shakedown in history. Bernie Madoff's bill was $10 million. He stole billions and billions. But Democrats, they're very, very corrupt people. It's amazing. It's a tragic thing to have to say, but it's true. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Mike calling from Sunshine, Maryland. Michael, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Chris, thanks for taking my call. When they hire Mitt Romney's niece, and everyone says, well, you know, this is bad because she might view the news through the lens of being on the right. Are they being absolutely self-unaware? Are they incapable of looking in the mirror, or are they actually, they know what they're doing? They're saying, don't trust her, trust us. Which is it?
Well, I think you've zeroed in on the question. You really have, and that is where it hangs. Are they that ignorant or that corrupt? Right.
Right. And I think it's Hanlon's razor, right? Never attribute to dishonesty or malice, which can be reasonably attributed to stupidity. So I think they're just being self-unaware and stupid.
Well, that is the generous conclusion, to be sure.
Yeah.
But the, I don't know. The corruption is a very distinct possibility as well. These people, they go to school somewhere, I guess, and they're smart enough to get paychecks on the order of millions of dollars, and they're so unaware of the duplicity and the, one of my sayings, Mike, is were it not for double standards, liberals would have no standards at all. But this goes beyond that, doesn't it? I mean, this is profoundly ignorant or profoundly corrupt.
But when they say that we play it down the middle, I actually believe that they believe it.
Well, that would be a mental disorder, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, it is. They are mentally disabled.
It's tragic because the proper function of our republic depends on a legitimate fourth estate, and we are lacking a legitimate fourth estate.